In other words, if somebody paid him $1 million to be deputy secretary of whatever, as long as the Trumps got $333,000, they're fine. But you better be giving them their 1/3 cut, because if you don't, you're in trouble, dude. You're in trouble. It's unimaginably terrible. So let's take the tariffs. People argue the policy of it. I mean, everybody pretty unanimously, it's bad policy.
Mm-hmm.
No, that is not their intent in doing this. Is not policy. It's shakedown.
Right. Exemptions.
There'd be a big surprise. They found out that the biggest Republican donors last time he did tariffs were exempt from tariffs.
Mm-hmm.
So this is, I'm going to break your windows or you pay me. So he puts it out, and it's the mob. Either you pay me, or bad things are going to happen to your business, and bad things are going to happen to your children. So that's what they are. Now, if Boris Epstein, of course he was selling positions. The only way that he will get into trouble if he didn't give the Trump family their cut. In other words, if somebody paid him $1 million to be deputy secretary of whatever, as long as the Trumps got $333,000, they're fine. But you better be giving them their 1/3 cut, because if you don't, you're in trouble, dude. You're in trouble. There's not anything wrong with selling a position, but not cutting the right people in on the deal. There's everything wrong with that. So we'll see. But if he's paying the freight, if he's giving them the cut, he'll be fine.
And James, we're seeing this 3 weeks after the election, almost 2 months before he takes office. You can imagine, but you're absolutely right. That's what the tariffs are all about. They're all about a shakedown and exemptions.
Of course they are.
And the question is, what do you do about it? I think they're two different, but not necessarily contradictory approaches the serious opposition should take. One, as you know, I think there really needs to be an aggressive, robust, well-funded resistance countering their dubious legal actions, many of which I think will probably be patently illegal. Attacking their policy. They lied about Project. Remember, Project 2025 came up, and Trump said, "What is Project 2025? Know nothing about it." Well, guess what? His administration is being populated by Project 2025 people and policy, and also to check on the conspiracies and lies that the very, very big right-wing media tells, which then passes on to Vance and Trump. And I think, and to look at the pervasive corruption you were just talking about. The old order isn't up to this challenge. We need a new order. And also, Jonathan Last, in the always interesting Bulwark, had a good piece. He said, freak out a little bit less on the bad things Trump is doing, like the tariffs, and challenge him to actually do it. Usually there's a lot of bullshit. He makes claims and then isn't able to follow through, placates his base, and blames the deep state for it. But let's actually say, all right, you're going to do it. Let's watch it. Let's follow it.
Well, again, my view is everything is a shakedown. There is nothing legit. Nothing. And so the tariffs, if he gets enough money, he'll forget about it. He doesn't mind deporting people because, well, when the agriculture people come up, that's going to put a kind of stop to that, slow it down a good bit.
Or the construction people.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be a little harder than you think. But for enough money, you can write exemptions. Exemptions are the current currency of the United States government. You have a terrible policy, but you have exemptions. If you pay, you get the exemption. I mean, the corruption is everything. There's nothing beyond the corruption, right? There's no policy whose intent is not at its core corruption. And when you understand that, I think you understand everything.
Yeah.
And I really do.
That's who they
And
are. And James, they didn't hide it. They didn't use the term
no,
corruption, but they told you exactly what they were going to be doing.
of course they did. Of course they did. And the one thing that he can say is, I told you I was going to do all this, and you voted for me. And I can't wait till when the impending disaster happens, and you know what's going to happen. They're going to go to a diner in, small town Wisconsin, and people were going to say, well, I voted for change. I didn't vote for this. I mean, what? You know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I thought he was going to, drain the swamp. It was so difficult for people like you and I, and most of the people, 85% of people who listen to this podcast, we know what it is. And we're powerless, totally powerless. And by the way, we'll get into this during the conversation, but the resistance is going to have trouble raising money. These fundraisers are burnt. They're really pissed now. And the damage that the 2024 campaign has done, the damage that this decade has done to the Democratic brand is almost unfathomable. Almost unfathomable.
Boy, I hope those funders wise up, because they're going to get hurt too. But talk about the damage the 24 campaign did, and I think you're not. I think you place some of that blame on the Harris High Command.
First of all, remember I love that scene in the movie The Graduate where he says, Benjamin, come, one word, son, one word, plastics.
Right.
Right. One word, audit. So I have people that are contacting me to run for DNC chair. I promise you I'm not going to get in the middle of that. But anybody, and I don't have a vote or I don't have an opinion, no one cares, but I would say the policy number one is we're going to audit everything. We're going to audit the campaign. We're going to audit Future Forward. We're going to audit the DNC. So people can know. But I'm telling you, without complete transparency, the campaign, we think, raised $1.5 billion. Okay. We know that Future Forward, the last we saw was 900 million, so we can assume that they got to $1 billion before election. That's $2.5 billion. Do you have any idea where that money went? Does anybody have any idea where that money went? I mean, I have some places I started looking. All right. And it's all, Albert, I promise you this. The amount of money and the amount of lobbyists that were involved in this campaign is staggering. It's staggering.
Well, talk more about that, James, because if that's
okay.
I mean, that's not what the Democrats are supposed to be.
So we had this discussion that we thought when Harris was asked the money question, would you have done anything different than Biden? I think you did too, but I'll let you speak for yourself. Now, she just froze. I want to be loyal to Biden. I just can't bring myself to criticize him, right. Which was a very bad answer, but understandably human answer. So then, Stephanie Cutter, and she goes on Pod Save America. No, that was by design. The reason she gave didn't even make any sense. All right, so Stephanie Cutter owns a firm called Precision Strategies, who Jen O'Malley Dillon used to work for. That much we know. All right. And we think we know that they got a lot of the buy. I don't know. But there has to be an audit. And one of the really ironclad rules, I think, for Democratic politics is if you're a lobbyist, you can't work on a campaign. And now, my prescription to that is always get the campaign out of Washington. Well, they were in Wilmington, and they really couldn't. A lot of this goes back to one central character, and that's Joe Biden.
Yes.
I'm sorry. He stands over this like anything else. But they were all lobbyists. They were all compromised. They all had different things they were trying to do. And, and they made some poor decisions, and so now we said, well, the governments all over the world fell because of inflation, and they were going to. It's what I call political Presbyterianism. That the whole election was preordained. They say their polling never had them ahead. I don't know. I know there are a lot of public polling that had them ahead at one time or another. And I don't think it was ordained. I think as long as the strategy was that you were going to get more of the same and nothing new, it probably was ordained. But there was nothing to say that we had to run on totally on what Biden did in Biden's record. We had plenty of chances to differentiate ourselves, and we chose not to.
Yeah, Stephanie Cutter's an old friend. I like her a lot. When I read a report that her firm lobbied or supported retaining carried interest, James, there may not be a more outrageous tax break. It goes to the rich private equity and hedge fund executives. That's something the Democratic Party just ought to simply oppose. If they lose some campaign contributions, so what? I mean, this is not a left-wing thing. Bob Rubin, if you will, a lion of Wall Street, says it's a totally indefensible tax cut. But you get in that mindset. And I did listen to the Pod Save America podcast with the top Harris campaign operatives. But it kind of it was preordained. It wasn't convincing. And on the elephant in the room, the huge Joe Biden drag, not only did she give a terrible answer on The View, I went out reporting less than I have in the past, but 3 or 4 days in Pennsylvania, 3 or 4 days in North Carolina. The number of people who said, I don't want any more Biden. These were not all Republicans. There were some Democrats. And as you and I have discussed, I thought at that convention when she was being introduced, she could have praised the Biden record on infrastructure, on chips and other things, but said, we have some differences, as he did with Barack Obama. And I will have a different policy on the cost of living, price gouging, etc. I will close that border on day one until they pass a bipartisan bill. That's when she should have done it. And they froze. You're right. They just froze.
So do me a favor, because everybody understands. Explain what carried interest is.
Carried interest is a provision that allows these hedge fund and private equity guys that instead of paying the regular tax on what is just basically earned income, they get to take a special, much lower capital gains tax. It's a provision written, just for that kind of business. And it is, I don't know what the cost is, I forgot. It's not humongous, but it's not infinitesimal. And it goes only to the ultra rich. And as I say, if you talk to people like Bob Rubin, they'll say of course it's indefensible. And Democrats shouldn't be lobbying for stuff like that. I maybe I sound naive, but
I don't think that you being naive, but as I understand it, a lot of Senate Democrats ought to do it because there's a lot of money that comes in.
There's gold in them hills, right?
Right, but it again, it just goes to my point. And I'm not honestly. I know a lot of people that are lobbyists. A lot of very close friends of mine, as you do, and a lot of them are perform a service. That they're good people. They're good family people. They're honest people. They pay their taxes, but they have conflicts. If according to legal ethics, now people break them all the time. In lawyers are not allowed to have conflicts. They're not supposed to. It's against the rules.
Yeah.
And it's pretty hard and fast. And you say, well, I'm an honest person. I can represent both sides. Maybe. I don't believe you. Or I'm skeptical. I'll say that. I'm skeptical. And the symbiotic relationship between people that make money off of the government and people who run campaigns, there should be a hard line between the two.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, there are plenty of people that can do politics that don't have clients for money. There's nothing wrong. I want to be very clear. A lot of people I know government relations experts, and they have perfect right to do that. A lot of them honestly pay all their taxes, but they shouldn't be giving advice to political campaigns.
Well,
I think it's just.
I think your point's well taken. Lobbying is a First Amendment right. I mean, you can redress the government, but commingling the interest there with politics, a political campaign, is not a First Amendment right. And I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. And on the Biden issue, the answer that they gave was, well, she was just loyal to Joe Biden. As Speaker Pelosi said, what's really loyal is winning and winning the election. And there's no doubt that supposed loyalty hurt her. Would she have won if she had done what you and I talked about? I don't know, but she'd have had a better chance.
What about loyalty to the people that gave you $1.5 billion?
Yeah.
Okay, what about loyalty to the people that walked precincts? Hearing the stories about, people going door to door in Pennsylvania. What about loyalty to these people? What about loyalty to all the people who volunteered, state parties? What about loyalty to the members of Congress who are infinitely better off in a majority than a majority? What loyalty are we talking about? Okay, let's use the word loyalty. All right, what loyalty is, of course, Speaker Pelosi is exactly right. If you look at the title of the recent documentary about me, there's nothing that is legal that you don't do to win. But it's the ultimate test of loyalty. Are you loyal to Joe Biden, or are you loyal to the people in the Democratic Party? Let's talk about loyalty, because it's a word that gets shoved around a lot. And my question is, loyal to who? Who the fuck are you loyal to? And hey, look, Jen O'Malley Dillon, Joe Biden made her. She was in the White House, and I don't, everything that I don't know, I'm sure I've met her, but I never heard about it. She ran everything. All right. She ran the communications, she ran the field, she ran the entire thing. She was pretty good at amassing power. But when they say that, who are you loyal to? That's the question. It's not a question of loyalty, which is a good way to put something. It's a great excuse to have. But when you think about it, it makes utterly no sense. None. And shit, I didn't, people, donors will say, well, I didn't give Joe Biden money, I gave you money. And there were a lot of them that wouldn't give Biden money that gave money once she got in. And they thought they were getting something different.